coffee out of Christmas cups.
You didn't got mine, did you?
No, wait.
Because mine has a lot less
Look,
cream in
compare
it.
the color. Your color.
How about
expert.
the taste? Let's compare the taste.
All right. Oh yeah, no, this is mine.
That's yours?
Yeah. I was just comparing the taste.
You didn't taste mine to compare.
But you tasted yours.
Okay.
Yeah, I know this is mine.
So I get asked a lot how I got started as a self-employed person.
Okay.
So it seems like it's an important matter to people. And it's a complicated answer, so I wonder how we could simplify it. Kind of take like a simple, like getting started 101 take. Like what would you say if I said, hey, how did you start getting self-employed as a woodworker?
For me personally, I'm Scott, everyone, because they don't know that.
Yeah. I guess you should. It should have Scott Moore. You know, we've been friends for a long time. We got to know each other here in Flagstaff. So
for me personally, I've always wanted to work for myself. But just the idea of somebody telling me what to do every day really doesn't work well for me.
Me too.
And so it was kind of always a given for me that one way or the other I'm going to work for myself. And so my kind of journey of learning how to do that has been a lot of just jumping in and being stubborn and just going, no, I'm going to work for myself. But I've learned a lot of valuable, sometimes costly lessons during that process.
Yeah. Costly. So you were telling me a story earlier about one of the most costly, I think.
One of the most costly was I decided to start a business building rainwater collection systems for people, which a guy said, well, I want to collect all the water off of the this hillside by his house and put it into, put it through this thing, put it into a big pond, like the size of a swimming pool.
Okay.
And I was real forward and open with him and said, oh, I've never done it. I've never built a pond. I don't know how to build a pond.
And he was okay with that?
And he was okay with that. He said, well, look, I've been doing research on it. Here's how we do it. But, he trusted my ability to get the work done. And so I went ahead and did it. And I gave him a bid for $20,000 to do the whole project, which he was okay with.
All right.
And so the project went on for a couple months. And
had you ever done anything of that dollar amount? Anything similar?
No, nothing even close. And I decided, okay, this is it. I'm jumping in. I'm doing like a full-on business, get it. And I took out a loan to cover like tools and that kind of stuff for 10 grand, and then
took out a loan,
spend money on credit card to pay for advertising. Like I was just like, I'm going full in.
Yikes.
On my business here, and I hired people.
To me already that sounds like a big risk. Even if you were successful, my stomach
what I say is, this was like, my mindset was like, well, maybe this is how it's done, is that you just jump in and do this huge thing.
Yeah.
Okay, this is a cautionary tale.
Yeah.
So I did this, and we built the whole pond, and it came out really neat. Yeah. And it cost me around $40,000 to do the whole project.
Yeah.
And at the end of the job, he said, "Now, have you made any money on this? Like, are you okay? Is this good?" And
you were like, "Yes."
And I said,
"I made money for a credit card company."
Yeah. I said, "Oh no, yeah, that's good," because I was too proud to really admit that I blew it. I mean, I was too proud from the very beginning. I wanted to go in there and act like I knew everything about how to do this, and obviously I didn't. I could have approached it. I could have done the job, approached it very differently. Yeah. He was an open guy. He would have been okay if I said, "Look, I really haven't done this before, so let's take it in steps, and I'll charge you for my time." Mm-hmm. And that would have been a much lower risk way to do it. I didn't have to go out and buy a bunch of tools and do all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So if you wouldn't have tried to come across as, a legitimate, established business, you were trying to act like you had more ducks in a row than you actually did.
Yeah,
pretending to understand what you didn't understand.
Exactly. Yeah, and I've seen a lot of people jump in and do that, where it's like, let's put on this big show and look like we're legitimate because you're scared that otherwise you won't get the job.
Right.
And people appreciate honesty much more than you can be honest, you can be professional, and you can be small.
Yeah.
And you can actually
I
make
hear
you
you.
can make money from the beginning, especially in a job like this where there's very low overhead. If you're painting,
Why is there little overhead? When you say little overhead, you're talking about your woodworking business?
anytime I've done construction or woodworking, I mean, if you don't own any tools and you don't own any equipment to do the work, then you might have some upfront costs. But for me, I was a construction worker, so I
Right.
had all the tools that I already owned.
So now that's very similar to my business because you went from construction worker
Yeah.
to specialized woodworker.
Right.
I went from painting walls, houses, offices to faux finishes with rags, specialty finishes to murals.
Yeah.
And did a gradual change from the least specialized
Yeah.
to the most specialized.
So I jumped into that project and I was kind of stupid and bought tools I didn't need and equipment that I didn't really need. But
Yeah.
I got excited.
Because you're excited, you were being an optimist, is what you were doing.
Yeah.
The typical mistake of projecting a best case scenario. I could totally get that mural done in 4 days.
So-
in best case scenario, it might happen, but likely scenario is actually 8 days.
Right. And so here's another rainwater system I did that I actually did really well with. And in
Okay.
this one, these people said, we want to collect all the rainwater, we want to put it onto a sprinkler or a drip system.
Yeah.
And they had somebody already doing all their landscaping and setting up the drip system. And so I said, I said, great, I can design a system and I'll give you a bid. I called up the guy who
So
sells.
you designed the system.
I called-
that was part of what you were offering as
So,
is designing. The
I
system.
called the guy who sells the rainwater tanks, said, how much is it for this size tank? He said, for wholesale's this, retail's this, so I was able to make a little bit of money on the tank. But I found out that price, and then I talked to the landscape guy and I said, I don't know how to tie everything in on your end. Can you do all of that? And so the work that I didn't know how to do, instead of jumping in and saying, oh yeah, I'll do all that, I just went to a guy who already knew how to do it and said, can you do this part of the system?
Okay. And so did you just subcontracted out?
I subcontracted that whole portion out. The only portion that I personally did was to set up the pump and the system that came off the tank. If I'd rented or borrowed a backhoe, I would have hit bedrock and I would have been in big trouble because I didn't know how to do anything. So what happened is I took the stuff that I wasn't comfortable with, I found a professional, asked him to give me prices on that part of it, and I did what I knew how to do. And the system cost them like 12 grand and I made 6 grand.
Wow, that's cool.
And it took me, my personal work was maybe a week.
You were talking about pride kind of getting in the way.
Yeah.
Right? You have to be humble.
Yeah.
One of my favorite proverbs is do not despise small beginnings, because I learned that in the same way that if I were to throw away every little sprout of grass in my yard that wasn't full, rich green grass, I wouldn't have a lawn.
Right.
And so every little tiny beginning of a connection with a client or a job that seems tiny and insignificant, if I despised those, if I didn't regard them as a lot of potential value, then I would have nothing today.
Yeah.
And so an example of what you were talking about, getting in over your head, I remember first starting out thinking, oh, what I really need is to get a mural job in the public square where everyone can see my work.
Right.
And it wasn't happening.
Yeah.
I was like, man, I can do better than this guy, better than that guy. Well, how come I'm not getting these things? And I was a little bit embittered by it. Meanwhile, typical middle class income homes are asking me to come paint their kids' rooms, and I'm doing things for like bargain prices because I've tried doing higher prices and people have said out of our price range. Sorry,
Yeah.
Obviously they don't see that value in me.
Yeah.
So my point is that if I would have done the mural in the public space at that point in time,
Mm-hmm.
it would have been a permanent representation of my ability
Right.
as a muralist.
Yeah.
Whereas I built my foundation on just in people's homes with friends I knew, and got gradually better, so that by the time I had an opportunity and was respected enough by a business to do a larger thing, it was a lot better representation of myself, a
Right.
lot higher quality
Right.
representation I don't mean more accurate. I mean higher quality because I had
You
by
learned
then
a lot of lessons.
learned a lot more.
You a better painter.
And the quality of the painting was. I'm so thankful now that I didn't paint a 40-foot mural in the public space 5 years ago.
Because then forever people would say that's how Joe does murals.
Oh yeah.
You can start out a business on your own and really take, and a lot of times people don't start out because they're fearful of what if I screw up or whatever. You can take a very low risk start. By,
Yeah, I think so, I agree.
You can get the word out. We were talking at one point about well, how do you transition from being a painter to being a muralist, and you talked about the value of building relationships with the clients you already have.
Yeah.
And then starting to get the word out through your community of clients and friends and your church, saying, I would like to, that was a big one.
Well, just because it's such a large group of people that regularly meet and talk with each other. And so it's a social pipeline, and any kind of social group network is highly valuable to businesses.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why businesses can be so obnoxious, being intrusive, trying to get into personal spaces, because they know that's where job leads happen.
So this is a great example of how to kind of organically grow your business. You start out with the community you have. Let them know, hey, I would like to paint a mural. Do you know anyone who you think might be interested? Maybe you have a list of a couple people you go, I bet they could use a mural here or there. And it doesn't have to be huge. It could be in someone's bathroom, in someone's kid's room, you know.
Yeah.
You obviously have to have a little something to show these people what you do. If they're your community and they've already seen your artwork, they might already trust and go.
Or if they're a close friend, they might be like, sure, go for it.
Yeah, go ahead. I've got this blank wall here, give it a go. And you can do that, charge a minimal for it, make sure you're not losing money, but do something to get your foot in the door, because what can be more valuable than any of the money you'll make off of that will be the lesson that you learn and how you interact. Even if it's a great friend, be clear, this is my business, and so I want to treat this like a business relationship.
Yeah.
And just getting in the door that way, people will see it, word will get out, it can grow organically that way.
I always say there's a market for everything. And I understand that it's hard to sell scribbles on a wall.
Right.
Well, what's extra hard is to find anybody that places any value on that, including the person doing the scribbles.
Right.
But I entertain the idea that if a person were legitimately saying, I like my scribble drawings so much, I think that you could find a lot of joy in this also.
Yeah.
I believe they would find some person out there, and this is restricted to if they are being genuine and that they're not just being tricky, you know what I mean? They genuinely are into what they're doing. If there's one person, there's probably another.
Right.
And so I always entertain the idea, just because there's a whole bunch of other people that can do that exact same stuff. Stain decks, paint walls.
Yeah.
But they wanted me to come do it because they liked the way I believed in what I was doing, had good attitude about it, and had confidence and helpful attitude, had their vision connected with them. It was all on the personal connection that they wanted me to do that. Kind of just somebody that they liked and trusted.
Yeah.
And the art was the same way. I was never hired because the art was, but now I am hired because it's exceptional.
Yeah.
But at the beginning it was not exceptional.
Yeah.
It was just appropriate.
Yeah.
That's what it was. It was what they were looking for the price.
You know, that I think is a huge point, or a really good point, in that that people do business with people that they know, like, and trust. And it's worthwhile to know that when you go to a customer's house, let's say I'm going to do some handyman work, what they care about is, do you show up on time, and do you put in the effort, and are you honest about it? And
because all of their risks are going through their mind at that point.
And if you do the work, and then you're an honest and open person, and they go, well, that's close, but it's not quite what I wanted, they'll give you the opportunity to fix it. They're not gonna, it's not so much about it has to be perfect quality.
They just want to see the confidence in you
Yeah.
to take the burden off of them,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so whatever complications come up, they just want to know that you can take care of it.
I'm sure some of your people have seen the mural you did of the Tuscan landscape.
Where I was scared on the top of that ladder.
Yeah, and at some point during that video, the customer came in and said,
"Oh yeah," she's like,
that's
"Oh yeah,
really nice. How are you going to make it look more?"
A lot. She said indirectly said, "Yeah, a lot of my friends are coming over and saying, so how's he going to make it look more Tuscan?"
Right. How's he going to make it look more Tuscan? Which
I was
is
like, I know what
obviously
you're trying to
the
say.
customer saying, "This doesn't look Tuscan to me."
Yeah.
And
I had to respect it, you know. Honestly, it didn't look Tuscan. It was like a realization. I got all into the work,
right.
and then I looked at it with like, oh, yeah, there is that.
Yeah.
You know, you did ask, and I did agree to do a Tuscan mural.
Yeah, right.
So,
But you were able to course correct. You put in all these cool Tuscan buildings and trees and stuff, and I think they were thrilled with it.
yeah.
But I mean, that was a big project, and that very easily, with the wrong attitude, could have gone really poorly.
I could have been like the artist that's real protective about his work. And I could have said, well, this is my interpretation. Everybody has their own style. And they would have been like, we trust this guy.
Yeah.
And what's going to happen? What's he painting up there?
Yeah.
I mean, it looks good, but that's not what we were thinking.
We've had a painter at our house that got done with a couple rooms, and we pointed out, you know, this is not a very straight line. This paint's peeling over, you know, and he got very defensive, and we ended up, and he kind of ended up leaving all by himself. We didn't even have to fire him. He just said, well, I see this isn't going in a good direction, and he left.
Wow.
He had the opportunity right there to say, gosh, you know what, thank you, you're right, and let me fix that.
You'd be better off to say, all right, let me fix that, and then not fix it, than you would be to get threatened.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? To get the attitude is such a deal breaker.
It was such an uncomfortable circumstance too, because it was like he's in the middle of the job and he had to pack up stuff and leave. Yeah. But it was like,
I'll tell you, there's been times when I've been like, I see what you're saying. I definitely, let me see if I can work on that. And then it was like a little touch with the brush, and I was like, yeah, I worked on that.
Yeah.
It was the assurance.
Doing your work and interacting with the customer, you bring the whole feel of that situation through how you present yourself.
What do you want? Let's make it happen. What are you into?
Yep.
Let me get in your head, your inspiration, make it mine. And then I'll take that burden of creating. Use my creativity to make your vision happen. If you can do that, then you will become a highly valued person.
So that's a great example too for if you're starting out in the mural business, and it relates again to letting go of the pride. If you can go into someone's place and they say, I want a very simple field, I want a rock and a house on it, and they say, this is what I want, and you're thinking in your mind, this is...
Yeah, so two scenarios based on that, because I've been in that exact place. So one scenario, let's say that the given is you don't like the idea.
Okay, yeah.
And it's a genuinely stupid idea.
Yeah.
Okay. Not that I've ever thought that about any of my customers. So one way to handle it is, totally it's all showing.
Right.
You're an open book, and they are suddenly seeing that you don't like what they're thinking.
Yeah.
There's not a connection there.
Right.
I mean, if that was a date, then there's not. I mean,
Right.
you just broke up, right?
Right.
So what I'm saying is the other way is that you say, okay, I see what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
I see your goal. So it seems like we're trying to put together this kind of a feel, get into their intentions, their head, and then say, so why don't can we add something like this to that? Because I'm seeing this be made even better if we go this route, and then you modify it and make it better and better, rather than tearing down.
Right. Oh, and then there's a third way, and that is to say...
No, there's not a third way.
I have a third way.
I covered it all.
No, there's a third way. I'm going to interject my third.
Okay.
The third option would just be to say, wow, that sounds really neat, but that's a little outside of my style, I don't think I would be the guy for the job.
Really respecting their difference.
Completely respecting it, but I would rather somebody tell me that, say, that will be neat, and I'll maybe try to refer.
And you're also expressing belief
muralist
in their potential,
right?
Without being the person to execute it.
I think most of the time you can probably get into what they want and turn it into a good mural.
Yeah.
But sometimes somebody might just say, I want it. Let's say they want a style that's just not your style.
Which has happened to me many times.
People I want this mural that looks like a video game, anime, and you go, that would be really cool, but I'm really good at this style, and
there's no shame in that. Yeah, definitely. So I guess that is a legitimate third way.